Hello, book nerds. Welcome to the Book Nerds podcast. It's quite a different episode today. It's about this book, which talks about one of, especially the Indians are obsessed with tea. I mean, uh, our lives don't start without tea, and the night also. We need our share of some type of tea to close the day down. So, first of all, I would love to introduce the book. It will show up right on my left or right because I have the e-copy, not the paperback, because it wasn't available in India. So it's called the Tea Recipe Book, and we have with us Nicole Wilson, who is the author. And I must say, this session is going to be, between a tea nerd and a book nerd. So be prepared. It's going to be a lot of fun, although I love tea as well. So that makes us two. Thank you so much, Nicole, for doing this and writing this book.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm also a book nerd, so I thought when I saw your podcast, I was like, "That's a perfect fit."
Oh,
Yeah,
amazing, amazing. And
absolutely,
tea and books go together.
definitely.
Let's define that at the start of this podcast, and a lot of our community will agree. And without that tea and that cozy nook, it doesn't add up really, right? So first of all, you know I when I saw your Instagram, I was like, oh my god, I mean, how does one make so much of content about tea? And we here in India thought that we are the bosses of tea, we know everything. And you went out there and explored it, and you've been exploring it for a while now. You have this blog, teaformeplease.com, and it has been running still since 2008 now.
Yeah,
I mean, that's close to 16 years.
absolutely, yeah.
I love the consistency that, I love that in people, and the passion, takes you forward. I mean, even though one may be tired, but, you make some sort of new content because you're just so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Instagram first, and then we'll go further. Instagram is
Yeah,
important. Of course, tea
definitely.
is
It's probably my primary social platform. There's so
okay.
many different
Okay.
places to be on the internet now, but Instagram's
Yeah.
really my primary place. I just really love
Okay.
sharing about tea. So I had started my blog before Instagram even
Yeah.
existed, but that was almost 16 years ago, and I really never would have thought I'd still be doing it this long. But once you really start looking into tea, it's a rabbit hole that just keeps going and going. There's so many different types of tea, different origins, that I still learn something new every day, even after doing this for that long.
I was taken aback, to be honest. I was like, okay, I thought I know a bit, but then there are so many kinds. I mean, I went on and on into the book, deep into the book, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is truly a rabbit hole, and one needs to kind of explore. We have so many coffee lovers as well in India now. They do their own thing,
Mhm.
and they have their own technique. So I was very happy that tea lovers are kind of there and exploring, and diving deep into this. I would say, mm, would you call it a science? Because it
Be a
is a
science
science,
to
right?
it, absolutely. There's many beverages where basically you just get it in a bottle or a can and it's kind of already made. Where tea, you really have the ultimate control of how that tea is going to taste. How much leaf
Right.
you're using, with the water temperature, how long you brew it. You
Yeah.
really kind of there is a science to it, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I mean this passion for tea, because we need to know, our listeners would love to know, where did this come from, because it's not really something which everybody explores in detail. And whatever I know of the West, there are not, I mean, at least back in the day, 2008, 2007, there wouldn't be many chains or fast food joints promoting tea. Am I right? Or am
Yeah,
I
no,
getting it wrong?
definitely. Tea's definitely grown quite a lot since then. We're definitely, especially here in the US, definitely much more of a coffee country. I think
Yeah.
tea is slowly becoming more popular. Definitely, there's a lot of the like no alcohol movement that tea has
Hmm.
become, a popular replacement for. But
Yeah.
I grew up drinking tea. My mom still drinks more tea than I do, but she does like grocery store tea bags with milk and sugar. And
Okay.
I was at college and I didn't like coffee at the time. And my classmates were drinking coffee for, morning classes and pulling all nighters, writing papers. And I was trying different teas as like a substitute to that. And then I got lucky really early on because I found a website that was looking for a tea reviewer. So basically, they
Okay.
would send me tea and I would write about it. And I was like,
Wow.
I'm dorming at college. Free things sound great. I like tea. And I actually started my blog as a way to back up the reviews I was writing for them. So
Hmm.
it eventually took on a life of its own, but that was really what got me started. I just had this really great early education because they would send me hundreds of different teas to try,
Oh,
where most
wow.
people they discover tea a little bit more gradually than that.
Yeah. That's so amazing because you found this website and went on to review. Okay, let's ask you about the reviewing part now. I mean, there has been a learning of 16 years now. So what happens now? If I send you my tea, for example, I have made it in the Himalayas somewhere, deep in the Himalayas, and plugged it from a special sort of plant. And if I'm not wrong, it comes from a single plant, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of go about reviewing it? Is it like wine, you just rely on your palate, or what
Yeah,
happens?
pretty much. So you basically evaluate the tea, both in the aroma and the taste, how it feels in your mouth when you're drinking it. And you kind of just come up with tasting notes of like really what you're experiencing in the cup. It definitely
Yeah.
does take a lot of time and experience to like be able to describe that because for a lot of people, they might just be able to say if it tastes good or bad or if it's bitter or not, but not really like specific tasting notes. So it does take time to like develop your palate. And
Okay.
in a way, I'm kind of evaluating it for what it should be. So, like for example, you'd said a tea from the Himalayas, so that would be like say a Darjeeling tea.
Yes.
If I'm tasting a Darjeeling tea, I'm kind of mentally comparing it to all of the Darjeelings I've had before, what my idea of a good Darjeeling is, and seeing kind of where it fits into that.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So I let's talk about the book. There are so many recipe books out there, and a few are really successful because they just crack the code, because recipe books can get boring for many people. If I am not into the topic and I need to kind of educate myself, I need to perhaps delve into the history a little bit and get intrigued. So what was your strategy for the book,
Yeah.
the tea recipe book?
So we really wanted to, my publisher and I wanted to make a book that was very, very accessible. Tea
Okay.
can be intimidating for someone who's not as entrenched in it as I am.
Yeah.
That if you are someone who just, is used to getting tea bags at the grocery store, we wanted you to still be able to make these recipes. You didn't necessarily have to have lots of fancy equipment. You could use things that you already had in your kitchen. We really just wanted to make it like very easy for people to feel like they could step into making a recipe with tea.
So I love green tea, and it's just black and white right now in India. Some people just love it. I don't know across the globe, but just people. Some people are just obsessed with it, and there are some people who are no, they don't like it, and it's too bitter or whatever. They just say that, and I'm always on the lookout for a green tea which is very sort of blends into my daily schedule. It doesn't it's not bitter, it's not very lemony, if I can call it. So it's right in the middle. So what about this green tea thing? Why do people feel that it's not, it's an acquired taste perhaps? Why is that?
Yeah, so it definitely green tea can definitely be polarizing. One of the first things people tell me is that, they don't like green tea. Often it's because they're making it with very, very hot water. So green tea requires cooler temperature because basically when you use hotter water with a green tea, it over extracts it and makes it bitter.
Hmm.
So it's not that the tea
Hmm.
itself is bitter, it's how you're preparing it. But a lot of people
Okay.
don't realize that because black tea needs hotter water to get the flavor out. So they're used to
Yeah.
using fully boiling water. And when you use that same method on green tea, the end result usually
Hmm.
isn't very good.
So we are, some of us are making it wrong then. The temperature needs to be not too hot.
Yeah,
And
definitely. So I often say there really is no right or wrong way to make tea, but if you don't like the taste, then you need to make adjustments. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So have you been to India
I
before?
have not.
Have you?
I definitely would love
Okay,
to someday. Yeah.
okay. So we have these chai shops all over, and it's the quintessential, milk tea. But there are some people who just crack it. I mean, they have the ginger in there, and basil, and that's our favorite, at least in India, and at home as well, because it has got medicinal properties, and we feel that it's good for us. So uh, do you think that some people just have the edge of making better tea? Because I feel that, the same ingredients, you give anybody the same ingredients, it always turns out different. How is that?
Yeah, there definitely is something to that. I find, even if you're using the same tea, there are some people that think that like your kind of energy when you're making the tea has an effect on the
Okay.
taste, which sounds a little woo woo. But I've definitely,
It's interesting.
been
It's interesting,
yeah.
actually.
I've
Yeah.
definitely been in situations though where, the two different people made the same exact tea in the same way, and
Yeah.
we did like a blind tasting, and people found that one of them tasted slightly different. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so there definitely could be something to that.
So that could be the vibe. You can't define it. I mean, perhaps if your mom is making it for you and she's in a good mood, then it'll
Yeah,
turn out better,
definitely. And
perhaps.
with chai too, there's a lot that goes into, how much milk you're adding, how long you're boiling it for. There's definitely a lot of steps there too.
It's the science as
Yep.
well. But then there is an X factor which some people have.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's talk about your favorite teas, because you have a wealth of experience. You have been trying out so much. And what's your favorite tea place in the US? That's also, we would love to know, or elsewhere in the
Yeah.
world. Uh,
Let me see. I mean, that's a difficult question. I live near New York City, and there's definitely some really wonderful tea
okay,
places there. One of my favorites is called Tea Company, and so
okay,
they specialize in Taiwanese oolongs. But
okay,
oolong is the largest and most diverse category of tea because it can go from like very lightly oxidized, almost like you would think it's a green tea, to very
mm,
highly oxidized, almost closer to a black tea. So just within
mm,
that one category, you can pretty much find any kind of taste you're in the mood for. So
okay,
yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites.
awesome. So, what about you? If you have to make tea for someone, do you do you try to complicate it or just keep it simple? What's your
Yeah.
mode of operation there?
Usually simple. I'll kind of just ask, what flavors they typically like. If they're familiar with tea already or not. If they're
Mm,
not, for most people, black tea is kind of like a default that like that's what they recognize as tea. So
okay,
I might kind of go with the black tea, but maybe go with something a little bit different than what they might be used to. Like
okay,
here in the US, the default tea is just like a Lipton tea bag. Which,
yeah.
lots of people love, but it's maybe not the most flavorful. So, like
I hate tea bags. Oh
yeah.
my gosh, I don't. I would rather we have this homegrown chain in uh, uh, up up in North India, near Delhi, and it's called Kiwi, and they sell these leaves, and that's my go to, because the bags just don't feel organic. I mean, it's just, I don't know about others, but I don't like it at all. You were
Definitely.
saying, sorry.
Oh, no
Yeah.
worries. But yeah, so I would probably make them something like the tea I'm drinking right now. So this is a black tea from Yunnan in China. Loose
Okay.
leaf, really just beautiful leaves, but it's very, very sweet and malty and like just very different from what someone who might think black tea tastes like. So I
Yeah.
really love presenting teas like that really kind of open their mind to what tea can be.
I think it's a matter of trying different stuff, and if you are close minded and you don't want to experiment, then of course you will just have that chai or whatever. So in general, Indians are pretty close minded about their tea. They just want it one single way. But now, since there are many chains that have come up and they are experimenting, so we also want to kind of but green tea has been a breakthrough because of some, I mean, the Liptons and whatever,
Absolutely.
because of that,
Yeah, I
perhaps.
mean, even
Okay.
in India, there's such a variety of teas that and tea regions that the teas are very different in Darjeeling or Assam or Nilgiri.
Hmm.
That I think there's definitely lots of opportunity to explore there, even just within India.
Yeah. I saw your session with the owner of Kumau Tea or
Yes,
someone. What is that? What's that all
yeah,
about?
so they're basically working to, assist farmers. They're not in Darjeeling, but it's not that far from Darjeeling. But so,
Okay.
he's working with small producers where typically tea in India is grown in like a larger plantation style, similar to
Yeah.
how it was under like British rule. That
Yeah.
it's maybe not the greatest when it comes to the rights of the workers sometimes, and so
Yeah.
they're working on a different format where they're have small producers that are growing the tea themselves. They're building a factory so that they can produce the tea there rather than just selling the leaves to a larger factory where they're not really making that much from. And so it's really just a really amazing project to help bolster the small tea farmers there.
Awesome. What about your brand? Do you have your own brand, or you're planning to,
No,
or
yeah, that's I do not sell tea. That's the one
okay,
I often get asked that. But I love tea so much. I don't think I could actually make a profit selling it because my I
it's
would be biased in my business decisions.
you, it's similar because we don't sell books
Mm.
and we just talk about books. You become so close to the entire thing that you feel that maybe you will not do justice, and it's better to just consume, enjoy, and
Yeah.
review.
Absolutely. And through my writing, I've been able to help promote so many small businesses that I wouldn't
Um,
want to compete with them because really what I've been doing for
okay.
the last 16 years is to try to help them grow.
Yeah.
So,
What's your favorite business? That small business that you have
oh,
promoted, and it is amazing.
that's a really tough question because I really almost can't, because so many of them are people I consider friends now. One of the things I love about tea is that it's connected me with people all over the world who I've never even met in person, but we've
Uh,
developed really wonderful relationships. I know you brought up the video with Kumau Tea. So Raj,
yeah.
who does Kumau Tea, he also has a tea company here in the U.S. Called Young Mountain
Okay.
Tea, where he, does a lot of great work promoting Indian teas. He's definitely one someone I really admire his work. But there's so many. It's almost impossible to
That's
narrow
amazing.
it
That's
down.
amazing. Since it's called Kumauti, and we are very close nearby. I didn't know
Oh
about it.
yeah.
So it's your Instagram that I found about him. That's very strange. We are just like 250, 300 miles apart. So it's quite amazing. Okay. What about in the book you mentioned so many teas. There is boba tea, and there are so many, and there's yellow tea. There are so many that one needs to kind of really, it's a research work, to be honest, and it you have taken a lot of time and effort to come up with it. uh, I also hear about this new tea called matcha.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I pronouncing it right. It's quite a rage in many countries. What is
Yeah,
matcha tea?
so
What is
matcha is a Japanese green tea. It's made from green tea leaves, but during the growth period, the tea bushes
okay?
are shaded to prevent
Okay.
sunlight from getting to them. And so what this does is it kind of puts the plants into a stress response since they're not getting as much sun. They produce more chlorophyll, more caffeine, more of everything that we like green tea for.
Right.
And then after that, they take the tea, they take out the veins and the stems from the leaves, and then it's ground into a very fine powder. So rather than steeping it like loose leaf tea, because it's a powder,
Mhm.
you basically whisk it into water, or it could be also whisked into milk for a latte. And so
Okay.
it has quite a lot of caffeine. So a lot of people use it as like a coffee replacement. Um, but
Yeah.
it's really has a very unique flavor, very, very vegetal, can be bitter somewhat, especially
Okay.
if you do make it with water that's too hot. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I definitely have people tell me that they think it tastes like grass. Um, but I really, really love matcha.
Awesome, awesome. Sounds great. I need to check it out. I'm sure it will be available. It is available in India. I'll have to find it. What about the health benefits? Because, all of us are looking for, as you said, that we are looking for alternates to the Cokes and Pepsis of the world. I mean, at least I have given up on all of those, like 4 years back. And coffee kind of, I feel that it intervenes with the rhythm of our sleeping, and I don't like that, because I don't want to do that to myself. Already I have reels on Instagram to do that.
Yes.
So what about, what would you recommend in terms of, health benefits, and which teas to prefer
Yeah.
perhaps?
So the great thing about tea is that they all come from the same plant, Camellia sinensis. A lot of people, they think of like mint or other herbs that you brew in hot water, but they're not technically
Yeah.
tea because they don't come from that tea plant. But because
Yeah.
all tea comes from that one plant, they all contain some level of the health benefits that we're looking for, like antioxidants.
Okay.
They do contain caffeine, but tea also
Okay.
contains an amino acid called L-theanine that relaxes your central nervous system. So that's
Oh,
why, with coffee, you kind of get that rush and then a crash. Where with tea, it's a much more gradual step down, like you're not feeling that crash at the end. And it's because we have
mm,
that L-theanine that also helps us relax, even though caffeine does help us feel more awake. And so I always say the healthiest tea is the one you like because you're actually going to want to drink it. I always say, people will start off drinking something they don't like, kind of like that gym membership at the beginning of the year, and then you go
absolutely.
back to them later in the year around June, they're not going to the gym anymore. They're not drinking that tea anymore.
Awesome. That's great advice, because, if you love something, just keep doing it. Although I try to experiment, but uh, the chai, yeah, it's in us.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have to have it. Yeah, it's just that. And okay, uh, my last question about the book, because it's a tough book to crack. What about the editors on your book? uh, what were their recommendations for such a book, because you have so much of information.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could have written perhaps a tome, a Game
Definitely.
of Thrones about tea.
Yeah,
You could have written
we
like
had to find a balance. The editors had a pretty specific idea of what they wanted to have in the book.
that.
But
Okay.
as a tea person, there were certain things that, they didn't even know yellow tea existed. And I was like, I will
Okay.
look like I have egg on my face if I don't at least show that there's yellow tea. So certain things we had to compromise, and I had to kind of explain why this is important to have in the book.
Yeah.
For example, boba, they really wanted to have in there because it is such a trendy thing. Boba is very,
It
very
is.
popular. I
Yeah.
personally didn't even really like boba before writing the book. Um, I had to do a lot of recipe testing for that particular section,
Yeah.
because, a lot of the instant boba either doesn't taste very good or they all have very different preparation directions. So it's like, how do you write a
Right.
recipe when, every brand is a little bit different on how they make it. So I wound up developing a way to make boba at home in the microwave in a small batch so that you can make just enough for a
Wow.
couple of drinks. And I had to eat a lot of boba, so I wound up developing a taste for it because I had to test so many,
Yeah.
when making the recipes.
Yeah. Okay. I said final question, but suddenly something popped up. Which is the tea that has surprised you? Like you didn't have much of expectation from it, but it really surprised you that, oh my God, I I didn't know about this. This is much better.
So one of my really favorite types of tea are a type of oolong from China called dansong oolongs.
Okay.
And they're very interesting because there's different types of aromas that the tea plants can have. And so
Okay.
with nothing being added to the tea, they can taste like magnolias or like honey and
Oh,
orchids. And it's just mind blowing to me that they can create these aromas in a tea without adding anything to it. It's just, the cultivar and how they process the tea that make it taste that way. And it's definitely, it's one of my kind of goals to ultimately taste all of them because there's so many different kinds and they're all slightly different.
okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Would love to try that. And thank you so much for doing this. I mean, this has been a very different podcast, but love it. And that's what's exciting about hosting this show. You get to know about new books, new authors, and new content. And I must say that your content is nothing like any other content on the internet.
Thank you.
I am so happy that I found you on Podmatch. Shout out to them.
Yeah, Podmatch is awesome. I've met some really great
It's
people
crazy.
through being on podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, and what are the odds? I wouldn't have found you. No ways. But it's just amazing that we found each other and found this book, the tea recipe book, guys. If you want to order it, you can order it from Amazon, I think so. Maybe you would be able to get hands on the Kindle. And I request Nicole if she could get paperback soon into India.
I
That
know,
would
I
be amazing
know.
because these kind of books you need to kind of have the feel of paper.
Definitely.
And at Book Nerds, we are all about that. Just like you are obsessed about tea, we are obsessed about books. So
Definitely.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for doing this and happy reading. And yeah, I'm going to try all the teas that you have recommended. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you.